Hi, everyone. I am uh, wanting to tell you right before Mason Leigh is going to come on in a minute. I'm going to invite her on. But first, I wanted to tell you I have a free workshop coming up that is offering busy solo business owners a 1 hour quick start on how to finally start building a team. This is happening on September 1st from noon to 1. And I am inviting anyone to come and just get a quick start guide, steps for starting. What I find from entrepreneurs that I talk to and meet is that you're too busy, and yet you're even too busy to pull back and even do the work to start building the team. So this is going to be a workshop where spend an hour with me and you're going to have a plan by the end of the workshop on how to pull back and find your ideal team members. So put that on your calendar. The link to register is in my bio, I believe. If it's not, DM me, Maychan510, that you're interested, and I'll give you all the details. So now I'm going to invite Mason on, and Mason's already in the room, but I'm going to invite to the live, and then we'll begin our conversation together.
Hi.
Mason, thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining.
Hi. I'm gonna adjust this, I guess, a little bit.
I can see you.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
Yes. Hi.
nice. How's your morning been? Oh,
Oh.
you're not noon. You're East Coast. It's been a whole day for you already.
Yes, it's yeah, we're in the afternoon at this point. So yes, errands have been done, prep work, that kind of stuff. Mondays I tend to not do too much because actually I have kind of a backward schedule to most people. So on the weekends I'm actually like training and I'm like spent that like Monday needs to be like the
Uh,
vacation. So I try and
nice.
keep it like kind of minimal on Mondays, mostly speaking anyways. So
All right. Well, this is a perfect tee up to everyone meet Mason Leigh. Tell
uh,
us, Mason, what you do, what your business is about, and how you came to start it.
Sure. So I am a yoga teacher and I specialize in triathlon and oncology/cancer, right? And how that sort of came about, I guess, to try and put this in as quick of a nutshell as I can, right? Um,
Take your
my
time.
father, thank you. My father died of cancer about 20 years ago. And at that point, I had already been practicing yoga. And then if we fast forward a little bit to, post collegiate sort of like life and world, I came across I wanted to do a triathlon, right? And
Mhm.
by serendipitous sort of like just the universe plopping things into my into my lap, that there was a cancer organization, a research organization that I ended up raising money for. And so I did my very first triathlon in honor of my father, raising money for cancer. So who
Mm.
knew that like 16 something odd years later, I would still be doing triathlon. But within that process also, I decided to become a yoga teacher or to get certified, I suppose. And with all of that, my journey brought me into towards cancer at the end of the day. And
Mm.
so there is this specific cancer or yoga for cancer certification that I had come across actually several years ago, and I kept meaning to try and like make it happen, right? But like the different kinds of the scheduling of it, and then like pandemic and all these things, it just
Yep.
wasn't like sort of exactly happening. But there was this really, I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I guess right there's this. It's like the universe just sort of brings things together, right? So there
Perfect
is the
timing,
woman
always.
right? The woman that uh, owns the company that provides the certification, right? So
Mm.
uh, she is someone based out of the East Coast, right? Her program is here in New York City, right? So
Right. You're in Brooklyn, right? Let's tell
right,
everyone where you're based, right?
Right, correct.
Yeah.
And and she's very well known, and her program is, this very wonderful, program to get, teachers that are interested certified in a specialized sort of niche in yoga, right? So, and I know this part may sound like it's completely unrelated, but I swear. So, my mother
No, I
lives
believe you. It all
in
comes together.
yeah. My mother lives in California. She's actually in Fresno, so it's not too far from, from where you are,
From
right?
Oakland.
And
Yeah.
she has an orchid shop. And last year, I was spending sort of like the month of May with her, and Mother's Day is sort of like the biggest and like craziest week for her, right?
Yeah.
So she
Okay.
was, basically abusing me. She's like, Mason, go do this, go do that, go do the
Right. Family
deliveries.
help.
Right, exactly. I'm like, okay, mom. Right. So this was the Friday that the day before I was going to leave to come back to New York City, and my mom tells me, you have. She's like, I have one more delivery right for you, and I was like, okay, that's fine. I was like, it's only like a mile away. I'll get it done. Then I can go do all the things for mom, and then it'll be great, right? So I drive up to this beautiful house, and it's a little bit like it's an older neighborhood in Fresno, and there's not like that many like um, homes that look like this. And there were these windows that were like these gorgeous windows, and you could see straight through. And she had this gorgeous house, and like I was just like supreme, like just really amazed by these
Who
windows.
is this? Right? It makes you want to know.
So like she opens the door, and it's just older woman, and sweet. And I just asked her about her windows. I was like, are these original? And she's like, yes, they are. And then she was like, do you want to come in? Right? And I'm like, I'm like, okay, well, I'm vaccinated. This is pandemic, still kind of early on. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you can come on in, it's okay. And I was like, I don't know, maybe she just needs a little company, and I was like, okay, I can deal with this. I'm masked, I have my vaccines, and I'll just go on in. So I go inside, and she's asking me about like, my mother, and I was like, yeah, I'm just helping my mom out at this orchid shop. And she's like, oh yeah, I have a business with my daughter too. And I was like, oh, and I was like, what do you do with your daughter? And she's like, oh, I have a yoga business. And then I stand there, and I'm kind of like, she's beginning to look a little familiar. And I was like, what kind of yoga? Right? Because in my
Yeah.
mind, I have this very specific thing. And then she's like, yoga for cancer. And I was like, are you Tari Prinster? And she's like, do I know you? Have we met? And I was like, no, but I have your book, and I've been like trying to do
Wow.
program for like years, right? And so like, it's one of those like moments where I just was like, okay, if there was like a yoga convention in Fresno, like this would
Right.
make more sense. Or like I would maybe,
Right.
okay, maybe I cross paths with her. But the fact that her daughter on the East Coast like called my mom's small little orchid shop to be like, hey, I want to send some flowers to my mom for Mother's Day. And then my mom is like, you need to go deliver it. And there wasn't even a name. It just said to mom, right? So I didn't even have a name ahead of time. And so I'm like, hey, are you mom?
Yes.
So like to come across, Tari, when, in a place like Fresno, which, nobody goes to really, right? Not really.
Yeah.
And, and her program is exactly the program that I've been looking at. And, and Fresno's actually where my father is buried, right? So it's like,
Mm.
for me, it was this extremely, and still perhaps extremely like special moment, where I thought Fresno has gotten a gift with Tari being there.
Right.
And if you fast forward, so I got my oncology certification from her program, ultimately speaking.
Yes. Yes.
Not,
How could you not? Right. It's almost like universe said, "Hey, you come together." Like,
right. Yeah,
what
exactly.
else could you make of that? Yeah, that's an amazing story.
Yeah. So I say, so that brings me to, I guess, where I am, with my yoga company. And right now, I think the I guess the main focus right now is me putting my new sort of membership program out there, for the oncology yoga side. And yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to touch on like how like triathlon and cancer, like a little bit more on that, or what would you?
I think it would be great if I think this will come up as I ask the next question is what's your greatest joy? And I think of that as sort of what's the core draw for you in this business. And I think with triathletes and in cancer yoga?
Sure. Somebody kind of asked a similar, like worded question to me actually yesterday, and my response was, um, I'm just really interested in this. And if you pull back a little bit more on that, it's actually, I think that as somebody who has grown up in many ways feeling, or, in many experiences where I feel very misunderstood or like sort of like on the edge of like, I'm just kind of like this, black sheep, sort of like lone wolf over here. Um,
Mm,
I'm very deeply empathetic to those that feel maybe perhaps very alone or just sort of feeling on the fringes of society sometimes. And
mm,
so then, cancer obviously is deeply personal to me on, on one level, but on another level, I've heard the way that people describe cancer. I've, watched interviews, I've, read a lot of things, and, I'm thinking about my own father's experience. It's been described as like one of the most lonely experiences
mm,
in life, because even if you have like the most amazing support system, it's still like this burden that somebody who has been affected by cancer or diagnosed with cancer in this situation, that they feel, alone, because even if
mm,
like they don't want to put the burden of the fact that they don't feel great onto any of their loved ones, right? Like,
mm,
yes, the
mm,
loved ones,
mm.
let me help you, let me whatever, but ultimately they feel like they can't fully express like that they basically feel like shizzle, right?
Yeah,
Shite all along every
yeah,
day, right? And they have better days and worse days, but like, if you're on the other side of cancer where you're just maybe a caretaker or a friend or a loved one, you know it may, I mean, whether or not you think you can take on the the hardships of perhaps of your loved one, right, in terms of like how they're feeling bad or whatever it is, right? It's, I guess I resonate with that feeling like, who do you talk to, like where do you fit in,
mm,
is there
mm-hmm.
anything for me? And so um so yes, I have an interest in sort of, I
Yeah,
guess, the the way that cancer impacts a person um,
hmm,
in their lives emotionally, um, and just how they sort of feel very alone.
yes.
Yeah.
And if I can just uh, reflect, what I'm hearing is that your own experience, not with cancer, but with other ways that you have felt othered outside. And you and I talked before this conversation about being a person of color, a woman of color, in a place where you felt very outside, just
Mm.
from that one aspect. And of course, the human experience is, there are many ways even beyond that to feel outside the norm or outside people's understanding. So
Right.
I think I'm hearing that your experience of feeling alone, you're seeing a kinship maybe with people struggling with cancer and wanting to be part of building some bridges that you found some healing from, you want to help provide for
Correct.
people struggling with cancer. That
Yeah.
fits right in with your membership, right? That you're
Yeah.
building a community to
Yes.
bring others together so they can all be less alone. And I
Right.
almost said we because I think at some level this is all part of our collective. Like I also say that I'm a community builder, and I feel like this is just part of the, I don't know if it's 2022 pandemic,
Mm.
just everyone really longing for belonging.
Yeah. And I guess the other part that I guess I forget to mention this sometimes because I don't talk so openly about my father all the time, really ever.
Mm,
So,
mm,
but I that I have to speak about him a little bit and how that impacts and has influenced sort of where I am right now.
yeah.
But when I think back on his cancer journey, and how that impacted his life, and because I was still fairly young when like his first sort of bout with like a medical issue, which wasn't cancer, right? But that like eventually kind of like led towards, I think, more of a compromised immune system, I think, and it's
Mm.
in a situation that didn't make it optimal for him. So when he got diagnosed with cancer when I was in high school, and then he, went through radiation and went into remission. And then you fast forward a little bit, now I'm in college, and the cancer has resurfaced and come back and just sort of like taken over.
Mm.
But when I think about how I interacted with my father back then and his sort of state of being at times, I can actually, and I will never be able to fully diagnose this, right? But I can imagine now that I sort of know what I know, like that
Right.
he probably was depressed, that he probably did feel very alone because,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of his family is healthy, right? Leading fairly active lives. And so, you know, and sometimes I think, things came out of him that I think probably weren't intentional, but probably were just because there's nowhere for it to go, because he's also, he's an Asian male. He's also the firstborn son, right? And like, I'm sure that there's all these things that like sort of like play into it that like I
Intersections
did
of identity, speaking
exactly
to this giant impact of our finiteness, right? This imminent
right.
end to the path. I know
Yeah.
it is a lot. It's a lot. And I think I shared with you too that I lost my father to cancer too. And of course, he also is a Chinese immigrant from uh, Hong Kong and came here. Really, I think I've held all those burdens in ways that I understand a lot more now than I did then
Yeah.
too. Yeah, and to watch them. I mean, interestingly, I feel like cancer helped him sort of wake up to come out of depression in a certain way. In that it allowed him to really receive love for the first time. I think he
Oh,
finally realized that it wasn't everything wasn't just someone's trying to get something from me, because he was kind of at the end of himself,
right.
and realized that people were still offering kindness. I think it helped him kind of believe in humans, like human love. So
That's a,
there's just a bit of redemption in my experience with
I,
my father and his journey. But yes, it's a whole constellation, right, of identity pieces, and I'm just grateful that you're seeing connections and ways to bring people in from all of those spaces. It seems like I looked at your website too, that you specifically are calling in AAPI, BIPOC, uh, queer of all sorts, all the people on margins in the
yeah,
margins in some way. And
right.
I just know it's going to be beautiful. You and I talked about like how maybe it's hard for people to understand triathletes and oncology, and really I feel like community and people on the margins, feeling on the margins and called in to what's possible is language I saw on your website, right? That we find hope really from connecting with each other and knowing that we're not really as alone as I think many of us can feel, no matter again what background burdens that we all carry. I want to just pause and welcome the people that are in the room with us. We've had a lot of people jump in here and just do jump in the chat and comment, ask questions, and tell us what you're resonating with too here as we talk. So welcome. Are you seeing your people? Are these some of your tribe people? I do
I,
see some
I,
of ours.
I, yes, I would say yes. Some of them are, and yeah, I
Nice.
guess maybe I'm surprised. I don't know.
Yes, I think it's really beautiful. I again, community building. You and I could have this conversation in a vacuum, but I love having it on IG Live because it does feel like we're all here together, and just we can be even remotely together in ways that really do inspire and lift each other up. So, welcome. Hi, Kat. Yes, yes. Kat was a previous podcast guest, and Raw Edge is her profile, and she talks about eating raw and nourishing your body in that way. Thanks, Kat. I see Lydia here, also in the health professions, and Deerish is in the yoga chakra healing side. Deerish did a chakra
Oh,
reading with me and others. Welcome, everyone. Um, so do jump in. Anyway, thanks for letting us pause and
yeah,
welcome
no
more
worries.
people. I love it. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, so I think I'm hearing some of your greatest joy is maybe where you've seen people connect and come out of lonely existence and come together.
I think I've had several like unexpected moments, and so you ask about the joy, and I feel like I mean all of it brings me joy in the sense that like because I get to sort of pursue and focus on the things that do interest me, right? I think that in and of itself I'm grateful for, and that brings me immense joy as it is. But what I didn't exactly expect sometimes, like I'll talk about that I specialize in oncology yoga, and then people were just and it's generally speaking to somebody who has been diagnosed with cancer and
Mm-hmm.
one, as opposed to somebody who's just been touched, who could be somebody who's a caregiver or somebody who's affected in some other way, right? And there'll be this moment where they just kind of get quiet and they're like, I I never knew that there was something like this,
Yeah.
right? I didn't know that there was such thing as like an oncology yoga or yoga for cancer, and and then I'm the first one to be like, look, I didn't make it up, like but
Yeah.
like it's out, so you can look it up, I think I'm, what I'm trying to do with it might be a little bit more, unique to me, but yoga for cancer in and of itself is not something like that I invented, you know. So like, but the fact that like, what it tells me though is that our our healthcare system isn't perfect, and you know even doctors aren't aware that, or oncologists aren't aware that there's this thing called oncology
Mm,
yoga or yoga for cancer that is especially dedicated towards and in consideration of bodies that have been affected by treatment and going through cancer, right?
mm,
And when they realize that, I guess it's that community, or it's there's a moment where like, oh, there's something for me out there, even though
yeah.
it's in this terrible sort of like nobody wants to be in this, in this sort of
Right.
club group section,
Right.
right? But the fact that there is somebody out there doing something for them that is on the wellness side, I think
Mm,
something happens in like for just a brief moment, and to I don't know, to be on the witnessing side of that is, I don't know, is it
mm.
like okay, wow, I didn't realize, like, to me it just was like, oh yeah, this cancer yoga thing, right? But then for
Yeah.
them it's like a door sort of had opened, right? That they
Yes, I can
didn't know.
picture this. I can really picture how what you offer is, I mean, even talking about wellness as opposed to um, focusing on the deficit, right? Of
Right,
focusing on this this mean thing that's
right.
happening in them. Even even the term, right? Yoga, we all think of, I think, if you know about yoga, it's like calling us to a spiritual space that is
Mhm.
about our um, almost like finding peace.
Mhm.
That's what I picture, where people are like, "Oh, is that possible?" Right? You're calling to something positive as opposed to just focusing on this war, right, that they're waging, which
Right.
I think
Um,
medical land talks about things more like that.
exactly. Although I'm glad that when you think of yoga, you think sort of maybe some like peace and maybe some a little bit more of a spirituality, right? But I think what I also come across, right, are people who say like, "Oh, I can't do yoga, right, because I'm not flexible enough. I'm not skinny.
Oh,
I."
right.
So there is, in the Western world of yoga, there is this sort of like other side to it. Right? People feel like they don't belong again because Instagram and all the stigma, or not stigma, but like the stereotypes of what someone has to look like or be able to do in order to practice yoga. And that's from, you know, a Western lens where it's been pushed to have like, you know, to contort into unreasonable, you know, positions, you know, just
Right.
for the sake of some Instagram photo or whatever it is.
True.
You know, to be like, look how flexible I am. I can do these crazy shapes that don't serve them and often can lead to injury for most people who are trying to also do similar things because they think that if they do this one pose, right, it'll somehow bring them the enlightenment that they want, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm not supposed to bend in that way, you know, but like,
Or that's
um,
not even the point, right? It reminds me of kind of the meta message of social media inviting this kind of cheapening, maybe, of depth,
yeah,
like the visual nature of
yeah,
it, um,
for sure.
kind of twists things into it's only important what it looks like on the outside.
Right.
And
And
yeah.
that physical portion is just one of like 8 limbs, you know, in the philosophies of yoga, the Yoga Sutras and stuff. One of the 8 limbs of yoga, and asana is just one, right? You have
Hmm.
all these other limbs that, you know, speak to, you know, the spirituality side, right? So if you look at like the Yoga Sutras, and I believe it's 1.2, where it says yogas chittas vritti nirodha, and I'm gonna apologize if that's not how you pronounce it in Sanskrit, but that's the best that I can do, given what
Sure.
I know.
Sure.
And what that is saying is like what yoga is. And it's, you know, each word, like I forget the exact breakdown, but ultimately it points to that yoga is stillness of the mind or like stilling of the fluctuations, the waves, you know, like different interpretations, you know, but ultimately it's about quieting a stillness, right?
Mm.
And me, like that stillness is what a lot of people in our modern society have a very hard time being in, you know, meditation for some people can actually cause a lot of anger because they're just like, I can't be still, I can't, you know, and it causes a lot of frustration because it's very hard for them to just be still for
Yeah.
even 60 seconds. And so this idea that yoga is really about what's happening up here and not the physical pose that you're in, and that's like, um, you know, what connects the mind, the body, and the spirit, you know, and the energy, and sort of tunes you into your, you know, radio channel, right? For those of
Mm.
us that, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
dial
The
into,
vibe, the
right?
frequency, many
Yeah,
words for it, right? Hmm.
right. So if you're like not dialed into your channel for your own version of spirituality or your own energy, then like of course you're going to be over here like not, you know, living, you know, your most, I don't know, manifested, energetic, vibe filled, whatever life, right? However you see it, right? So yoga is that practice to kind of tune you into your own channel. That's kind of the way I see
Mm.
it, right?
Mm. That's beautiful. As a business coach, it comes into my coaching quite a bit of like I say I'm a business alignment coach and I say your business is meant to be aligned with who you are and what you really want for yourself. And I
Right.
think of that, right, as just that aspect of what you just said. Tune in. And I'll tell you the coaching is often like, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I really want, and they might have a real, some sense of it, but as we dig and I'll say, what's the bigger picture, what's the big life end game for this business, what are you really wanting to accomplish, and it begs the question, to dig a little bit deeper. And I think this is sort of the key for everyone in some way, right? So I love that that's a way that we overlap.
Yeah, I love that you say that. And so my mind thought for a moment, you know, don't be afraid to dig deep, right? Like into yourself. Don't be afraid to, you know, create, you know, to get down to what your roots are, your own roots, right? Not anyone else's, right? Yours.
Right,
And
right,
I think there is, you know, this superficiality where, you know, social media also creates, you know, the life that you want everyone to see. And,
right,
you know, notice that it's become more challenging at times to have just a genuine, deep conversation with somebody, where you can really just discuss, you know, humanity, your, you know,
where you're really coming from,
where
right?
you're really coming from. And
Yeah.
so that even goes back to what I say, about how cancer is one of the loneliest things, you know, because it's like
Mm,
now you have all the social media to try and keep up that, oh, I'm doing okay. I'm going to treatment. I have, you know, a perk on my face. You know,
yeah. Everything's
like, look at
fine.
me,
I'm
right?
strong.
Well, I'm going through radiation. Look at me doing this, you know, and really they just feel like crap, you know? And like, I don't know. I just, I like the idea that I'm creating space where people can just come and feel like crap.
Be whatever they really feel, right?
Whatever it is, like
Yeah.
you can feel like complete crap and come, and I'm okay with that, right? Um,
Yeah.
and and I hope that you're okay with that because I think that allowing that space to like for people to be able to be, you know, sad or dark or even just feeling like showing up and still feeling lonely, but still being like I feel lonely, but maybe it's eased just a little bit because you communed with other people for a little while, you know. Um,
You know what I've seen in those group spaces along those lines? You come in with what you come in, and I mean, it's not magic to
right.
be in that space, like just being in there, like, oh, I feel better. But sometimes it's as big and small as you hear someone else's experience put words to what you didn't even know you were feeling. That's something that I experience in these group coaching spaces. I'm in a number of group coaching spaces for my own business coach betterment, but of course it's, you know, everything's connected, right? It's business coach and human betterment. And I go, oh right, those are the words, right? I didn't know, but yes, I do relate to that. And I
Yes.
just gain so much. I mean, it's a bit of less loneliness, but even like it's even an unlocking a door sometimes, just the beginning of a thought. And
Yeah.
that's back to your website. What I heard and was moved by, but was I just need possible, I think is the way you said, right?
Yeah. You just need possible.
You just need possible. Yeah. And something just starts to open and then there's a momentum to it. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Sounds just like a beautiful space. So we're gonna talk again about how to join that space at
Sure.
you'll tell people how to come. But the final piece of our interview conversation I love to talk about is can you bring a business challenge that you're wrestling with now that I can support or we can discuss here?
Sure. So I think it's still trying to get the idea of oncology yoga sort of more well known, right? I think that's sort of my
Mm,
challenge, right? Is
mm,
that yes, everyone knows yoga, right? But getting the word out there about marketing, you know, getting the information to the right people, basically. I'd say that
mm,
where um, you know, it's I there are a lot of people that I know, right? I guess it's just as much as anyone else, right? But how many of them necessarily are, you know, touched by cancer? They may know somebody, right? Which is also fine. Like I said, the program is open for anyone who the word touched by cancer is whether you're, you know, in treatment, you're in remission, recovery, you know, survivorship, or you're just somebody who knows somebody, you're a caretaker, all of that, right?
right.
But it's still kind of like this sort of like smaller niche within yoga, right? And I think just getting it out there and making
Mm,
it more well known, and that my, that I am this, you know, or company that offers this program membership community, specifically catered towards cancer, right? So,
mm-hmm. I picture when I'm hearing you talk about that, I'm picturing yes, within yoga, it's very niche. But what I think of is within life, cancer is not niche. I mean, and maybe it's the life stage I'm in, but I mean, probably at any moment can think of a couple few people that are actively in it or in the past has ever, you know, struggled with, or I shouldn't say struggled with, has had a diagnosis, is either in some stage of watching remission or, you know, hoping for a remission, total remission, you know, the testing, retesting stage. I think that is so powerful. Not only that, of course, there are many people who have been touched by cancer.
Right.
And I think also of the power of I can imagine it could be harder to find them in that space because maybe they're not they don't even realize that there's this positive healing space as opposed to just like WebMD, that rabbit hole is,
Right.
that all the reading that people do from
Yeah.
the medical side.
Mhm.
But what I think of your power as all the people who love those people and who feel helpless,
Mhm.
that they can be your referral engine in a sense of like, what can I do for this friend who I just
Mhm.
heard this news about? And
Right.
if there's a way to speak to that audience somehow, um,
Right.
people who are looking for resources for loved ones.
Mm.
And yes, How to Talk So
I
Kids Will
love that.
Listen UK is saying, I know so many people touched by cancer. Yeah, that is kind of one aspect to the forces of telling someone about what you're offering. I loved it in as a business coach. I talk about both the blessing and challenge of having something that nobody understands, right? It's like
Right.
the great thing is that people are like, you do what? I mean, it really is kind of an pattern interrupter, in terms of like the sea of, I don't know, I think of the scroll on
Right.
this beautiful land we're in, Instagram. Just what gets to stop the scroll, right? What gets to be like, what? And I mean, by the way, I think your name, even Death and Yoga Studio, is very catching. So bravo on that. But
Thank you.
yeah, so it's I think it's easy for business owners to be like, oh, the challenge is that people don't understand what I'm talking about because it's not an easy, I don't know, business coach. People kind of know what that is. And interesting, like what I say, my one of my business challenges is how do I distinguish myself from the sea of business coaches on Instagram? And of course, the answer is may, right? Like fully be the your particular version, my particular vision of a business coach. I definitely see that I'm not a typical business coach for
Mhm.
a myriad of reasons, but
Mhm.
it's almost like I'm envying you, right? For being like, I've never heard of this. I don't know what you are. Tell me about it, and there's just enough hook
Got
to
you. Okay, I see. Yeah.
be very like, record scratch, stop, wait, that fits things that I've been looking for, right?
Right.
I know someone, just even like How to Talk So Kids Will Listen is saying, I know someone, I just heard of someone, I know someone who
Mhm.
could really use this resource.
Mhm.
So I
That,
feel like that could open up maybe different hashtags, different channels
yeah. That
to
no,
get the
that's
word out.
a cool way to think about it. I had just finished reading this book about somebody who was a friend slash caretaker of somebody who um, had been diagnosed with cancer, and the book is all about all the things to consider when you decide that you're going to be somebody that supports somebody with cancer. And so it's
Mm,
like a little bit of a guidebook, and and she explains that like she doesn't ever regret being this person, but know that like these are some of the realities, like this is what could be challenging, like consider your own self-care, like there are a lot of things that you also need to be prepared for as somebody who is going to be a loving supportive person to somebody, so
wow.
I the perhaps I think there are a lot of us out there that know somebody who has been diagnosed with cancer and then often feel helpless.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe you're right. There is like maybe a sort of like an outreach to people like, look, you know, this is, there's this community, oncology yoga membership that has like, you could think of it like that oncology, a yoga studio dedicated to oncology that you could be like,
Right.
hey, let your loved one know about, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like I feel helpless, help. And you just hand them a ticket of,
Right.
this is something tangible, right? This is
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
tangible. Not only like the book sounds really beautiful. It reminds me of sort of in um, racial justice spaces, talking about how to be an ally. It's
Mhm.
don't just dip in and dip out. Like you got to decide where you stand, right? How to really, if you're really talking about going there, you
Right.
need some training and you need some support and mostly you need a long game
Mm. Yeah.
plan, right? So I love that
Yeah.
book and how your membership is partly that, right? Equipping how to not just one day, but weeks, months, years.
Yeah.
Support.
There is the cancer community needs consistency, right? So like consistent support. And that can be hard sometimes for, just anybody. Like, everyone has their own lives and everyone, all it's just there's so much going on, right? And
Right,
that doesn't mean that doesn't isn't to guilt anyone into like, oh, you need to do more,
right,
but
right,
like where a program like this can step in because there is the meditation, there is the asana, there is the psychological neuroplasticity of things where we talk about mindset and how you look at, life, right?
mm,
What's happening up here, right? Um,
mm,
and then there are social community elements where, people can just connect to other people who have cancer, right? And yes, that's a crappy thing to have to connect on, but you know what? These are people who are going to deeply understand,
right.
treatment, radiation,
You don't have to
surgery.
explain why you feel the way you feel, and you don't have to make other people feel better about the news that you are struggling with this. Yeah,
Right. Or like,
yeah,
walk on eggshells, delicately frame something so the person who is healthy, right, doesn't feel bad about how you feel bad, right? Um,
yes,
so like that space, I think, like I said, where you can just come and be like, no, I just feel awful. I feel awful today. And, and everyone, some people are going to feel awful too. And some people are going to be like, no, I'm having a good day. And it's this, it's that just that balance of like, the community that helps, you know, lift you up,
yeah.
if you're having a bad day, and then maybe it's your turn the next time or whatever it is, right? It's, um, I, to me, this membership is inspired off that adage, which I think I told you, it takes a village, right? And we all know this, and it's usually applied towards like children, the raising of children, right?
Right, right.
But like, really, it's true for all of our lives,
Everything. Yeah,
for every and when you are going through something like cancer and treatment and surgeries and stuff, like it really does, it takes a village. And I don't mean just me, like, or this program, like, it's your family, it's your friends, it could be your religious institutions, your medical team, your chosen medical, however you choose to do that, whether that's
mm-hmm.
holistic, Western medicine, Eastern medicine, whatever that is. Like all
Right.
these things, like are meant to complement each other. Or at least in my mind, right? Like I'm not like this isn't replacement or in lieu of. This is like, look, this can be part of your your toolbox, your team, that helps you get through all of this, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
sucks to have to.
Even reminding the person, sorry to talk over
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
even reminding the person that they can choose. That's what I just heard too, right?
yeah.
Again, it is their um, journey to steer. I think
Mhm.
is really
Absolutely. It's always their
empowering. Yeah,
yes,
because
and
that's
that's
another thing. My observation,
part.
medical Western medicine, right, is like you don't get to choose. We tell you what is and what
Right.
is possible now, and
It's very prescriptive, right? Like here's the drug that's supposed to whatever, right? Or this is whatever, and they eliminate options or things that somebody could possibly do to help them in the wellness aspect, right? So I have
mm-hmm.
another beautiful young woman that I have become friends with, and she has a very 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 rare type of cancer, and it's like so she has like neuropathy on her feet. It's very painful for her to walk, right?
Yeah,
And like and she was one of the first people that was just like, there's oncology yoga, like what? Like she was about to go off and do power yoga, and I was like, no 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 no, power yoga is
yeah,
not what you should be doing, especially if you can't stand on your feet, and
yeah,
it's painful.
Right.
And you have, you have consequences if you're on your feet for too long, right? But her
Right.
doctor never said, well, why don't you try oncology yoga, right? Maybe her doctor doesn't know, but her doctor also like never was like, oh, it's hard for you to walk. Why don't you just get some really thick, excuse me, thick ass slippers, right? Like, just just to cushion her feet so she could walk for a little bit longer. That's something like her boyfriend came up with. It's like, why don't we just get you some really thick slippers? And it helped.
Mm.
But like it's like
Oh,
these
good.
small things that are missing
Yes.
from the general care, I think. And it's not to like, say that Western medicine is terrible. It's not. But like, but it just doesn't, I think maybe our doctors are overwhelmed too, maybe. And they just don't have the bandwidth or the capacity or all the information to be able to, to do everything, right? So like there's nobody that can really do all of it, right? Even though we would
Right.
like it, we would like that pill to be the one thing that changes everything. And maybe it, removes something, or it takes, shrinks a tumor, but like ultimately, like when you have a diagnosis like cancer, like you really, it's a whole lifestyle shift, right? You have to look
Right.
at the way you think, the it's what you feed yourself, whether that's physical food, spiritually, just people that are around you. Like you can't afford to have things that are going to pull you down and make you, and have negative energy, and because that stuff
Mm.
is going to
Mm-hmm.
energy that you need to heal, in
Right.
whichever way, to be there, to be like, okay, I can get through this next treatment, I can get through whatever it is, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. I think I'm going
Yeah.
for
No, thank you. I'm glad that we got to talk more about the mindset,
yeah,
neuroplasticity, aspects of what you offer, because
yes.
I'm thinking again about my experiences. Like I know how to do they're sort of deliverables, but about, you know, uh, poses, spiritual. I mean, there's like a class, but
Mhm.
really, they're not coming to you for the deliverable. They're coming to you for the relief, comfort, like a whole feeling of hope. I mean, that can come in many ways, and again, it's just like deeper than what is visible on the outside.
Right.
So I love
Absolutely.
that your program is offering um, many things, and ultimately toward this holistic, I want to say a hopeful mental space, which I
Yeah.
think
No.
is priceless, right? In some sense, it's, if you can offer that, it's really the core of all of it.
Yes.
So
That's
sounds really beautiful.
back to the you just need possible, because that's
Yeah.
what that is. Possible is hope, and
Yeah.
hope, as I think many of us know, hope is that just small little mustard seed that like can carry you like over those mountains, and through the valleys. It's hope is we know that if there's no hope, that's death. You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
hope is possible. There's something more. There's life. There's something can happen. And to
And
be in that
not even
place.
necessarily the big picture, right? It's like the
Yeah,
today. It's like the right
yeah,
now. Hope
mhm,
is
yeah,
what is all any of us really know.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um,
Thank
yes.
you for talking with me and telling us all more about oncology yoga and this membership that you're offering. How would you like people to contact you about that, or find out more about any of what you've talked about?
Sure. So, I am here at Death and Yoga Studio on Instagram. So, DMs and stuff are fine. My website is deathandyoga.com. Some of that is, I will say, you might see it change over the course of, time a little bit, because I know it's still being, kind of updated, etc., and made to be a little bit more maybe user friendly. But those places, or deathandyoga@gmail.com, if you just want an email straight up, right?
Nice,
All those
nice.
places.
Okay, so people have a lot of ways to get in direct contact with you.
Sure.
What a
Yeah.
treat.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
thank
so
you.
much of what you've shared.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for letting us all know about it. Have a great rest of your day.
Well,
Talk to
you
you
too.
more. Looking
Yep,
forward to connecting more, Mason.
absolutely.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
And bye.
Thanks for joining.
Yep. Bye.